Let me have your attention. I'm very thankful that we're able to have this night. I'm looking forward to our presentation. I decided rather than go upstairs that we keep it close and family-like in here so that we can interact. This brother that is here came to visit with us in Memphis almost 4 years ago, I think it was now, that he was here with us when my church was out in Fraser, Woodrow. Dr. Oba T'Shaka is a good friend and a warrior. Has been a part of the struggle in that Oakland area, San Francisco, Oakland Bay area for a long time. In our zeal to find out who we are, we now have the scholars that are doing a scholarly work, researching. You know what I teach here at Greater Imani. And Kwame, Dr. T'Shaka, I often say that many of the dreams that you had, brother, years ago, the dreams of Marcus Garvey, the dreams of Du Bois, those dreams are being realized now. It's as if it's just that now we can understand what the dream was all about, what the vision was all about. And Africanism is becoming a reality today. More than a dream, it's a reality. This church is founded on partially the principle of understanding who we are, our ethnicity, our culture, our heritage, what we bring to the table in our Africanity, what we are all about, and we are on a rapid pace to try to understand more about ourselves. We couldn't depend on our slave master to teach us about us. And it is up to us to find out about us. So we are, and I like to say, brothers, that we are now in a new period of Harlem Renaissance. We're in a new Renaissance period of writing, of scholarship, of intellectualism, of learning about who we are and what we are, and why we are the way we are. I mean, it's just like we're being reborn again. All right. To find out why we are the way we are. And it's partially due to people like this that are blazing that path. You see, everybody can't just go out and start talking and preaching. Somebody's got to do the substantive, scholarly work. I borrow equality. After our lecture, the bookstore is going to be open. Dr. T'Shaka has brought some books here. I want you to know that the brother's not charging us to come here. We invited him to come here. And his books are for sale. I encourage you to purchase his books. He will be autographing books in the bookstore. And I urge you to go up there and to purchase one of these books. He's also got with him The Art of Leadership, which is becoming a textbook. We're going to be working on trying to get this book, The Art of Leadership, as part of the curriculum of the Memphis City school system. Senior, so. Not in the fields where he can receive the applause and the accolades of 1,000, but he's labored in the dark room with the books and the research, the pen, and the mind. And I want us to appreciate him as he comes to us to share with us in any way that he chooses. Would you receive and welcome Dr. Oba T'Shaka.
To all the brothers and sisters here in Memphis, those of you, I know many of whom are from the Greater Imani Church. When I was here in 1990, we took a 2-week trip throughout the South by car. And one of the places we came to was the Greater Imani Church. And then you all were in a sanctuary that the white folks had left. You all remember? That's right. It was a new sanctuary. It's amazing what white supremacy will do. Make people crazy. They give up a new sanctuary just because black people had moved into the neighborhood. And y'all had 800 members. So when I wrote my book, I was so impressed with the Greater Imani Church, then Baptist Church. We know since then it's non-denominational. That there are 2 churches in this book, Return to the African Mother Principle of Male and Female Equality, that I particularly stress. One is the Greater Imani Church. The other is St. Stephen's Baptist Church. And these are two Afrocentric churches. In fact, I've encouraged the preachers in both churches to talk to each other, because y'all are doing many of the things that more of our churches should be doing for our people. Because our churches shouldn't just be filling souls. They should be filling our heads and our stomachs. Amen. Understand? One of the things I like about your church is your pastor, Reverend Bill Atkins. He represents one of the highest principles of African leadership. In Ghana, when you install an Asante Hina, there are a number of things that happen first. He doesn't get installed until the Queen Mother nominates him. Y'all hip to that? Because if your mama doesn't think you're right, you aren't right. Isn't that right? He's got to be the most royal of the royals. Now, you know, in Europe, the most royal is the one who just has royal blood. He can be a mess. When you check out the history of Europe, most of them have been a mess. If they weren't, we wouldn't be here. You hear me? But the thing is, in Africa, we have this thing that I call royal democracy. You understand? Now, we have it in America. It's the Duke Ellingtons. It's the Count Basie's. You hear me? It's the Queen Aretha. Y'all into this? Y'all know about this, don't you? And for you to get into these great black classical musical groups, or these great gospel or rhythm and blues groups, you have to be royal. That means the best. And then you get to be democratic. You get to let your soul cut loose. Y'all know about that, right? Let it all hang out. You understand? I understand this is supposed to be the capital of Elvis Presley. only for white folks. Black folks know that Elvis Presley couldn't shake his hips very well. But I'm here to tell you, I was in Detroit last week and I met a brother who said that a friend of his taught Elvis to shake his hips the way he did. And we know he took Ain't Got Nothing But a Hound Dog from Big Mama Thornton. And got rich off of it. And couldn't even sing. We wouldn't allow a no talent like Elvis Presley to get into a Duke Ellington or an Aretha Franklin or any other group, because you got to have excellence. Well, we know this about the Asante Hina. He isn't just a royal blood. Royal blood means your family founded the nation. But you are the one who never lied. You are the one who never stole. You are the one who never messed with another man's wife. That's another thing. Reason why a lot of brothers are in Greater Imani Church. All right, they know this is a preacher who's not playing around with any other women. I know that's why his wife has stayed with him so long. But, you know, when you see how fine she is, you can also see that he's an honest man. But, hey, somebody with a fine lady like that shouldn't be messing around anyway. So the Asante Hina is one who never steals, never lies, never cheats. In war, never turned his back on his people. He's brave, because the Asante are warriors. Y'all know Harriet Tubman came from the Asante. You hear me? She had one policy. Her trusted Winchester rifle would go down south, following one star, and she'd come back following the North Star. And anybody with her could go two ways, forward or under. Because she understood that if she risked her life, if you didn't have enough guts to go all the way, she was going to take your life. Is that right? So among the Asantes then, the Asante Hina is one who demonstrates the highest character. But then before his installment, there are a number of things that happen. The Queen Mother takes him aside, and she instructs him on his role as king. And here's the rule. If any morning the Asante Hina wakes up and does not consult the Queen Mother, if any evening he goes to bed before consulting the Queen Mother, he is destituted. He is removed from office because he has disrespected all the women of the nation. Can you dig that? But here's the thing where I like your pastor. See, you know, your pastors living by truth. But here's another thing they have to do. And there's a whole lot of Negro leaders, house Negro leaders. If they had to do this, they wouldn't be leaders. You hear me? Before he sits on the stool, and the stool embodies the souls of the nation. His authority comes from the stool, which means those who have passed on and from the people who they look after. Before he sits on the stool, he must give up all his wealth. Can you dig it? Oh, it's real quiet in here. Because the Asante said, if a leader is not totally dedicated to his people, then he's worthless. So what better test than to see if he doesn't get any money? It's not like the President of the United States. He puts his money in a blind trust and then calls up the investor every week. You hear me? And his wealth goes back to him probably tenfold after the corporations have stuck in money for reward. You hear me? But since this man serves for life, unless he's removed from office, he will never see that wealth again. And what I like about your pastor is working full-time in this church, but he's not receiving a dime, a nickel, or a penny. Isn't that right? That shows you that there's some dedication to the people. Amen. Before getting into this presentation, I want to acknowledge a guest who came in and really honored us. A brother who, in the 60s, was known as Stokely Carmichael. A brother who, in the 60s, was one of the foremost spokespersons for Black Power. Then in the 60s and 70s, went and met with Kwame Ture, met with Kwame Nkrumah, and spent time with him and studied at the feet of masters. He is a foremost architect of Pan-Africanism. And is that Willie Ricks with you? Right on. Well, this brother is a brother who has not compromised on the issue of African liberation. Too many of our people have gone through the fire and got burned and have compromised and given up. And this is a great hero of African people. You ought to give him a hand. It's a great honor to have warriors in the house. Warrior essence. Isn't that right? My topic this evening is returning to the African way, the African twin-lineal way. All right. See, I saw those looks. Black folks always got to come up with something new. Isn't that right? We don't like to hear the same old stuff. When we were on the plantation and there wasn't nothing to cook, the sister would go out and with nothing come up with something new. Right? We're people always been able to go in our souls and come up with something new. And we know we need something new now more than ever before. Because all over the African world, African people are in worse shape than we've been ever before. And we're in worse shape because we have departed from our African way. The African roadway. There's a great Native American, his name is Black Elk. And he was a young man and grew up in the Lakota Nation, the Sioux. Y'all know that in America, when black folks had no other allies during slavery, we could go to Native American people. Y'all know that. We got some confused Negroes that may have 10 drops of Indian blood in their vein, and they not only know that, but they want to be more Indian than be black. But you know, in Florida, if blacks escaped from Georgia, they would go to the Florida Everglades. And they joined a Native American called Osceola. And he was a freedom fighter. And there were two armies. There was an African army, and there was a Native American army. And the African army was even badder than the Native American army. See, blood is bad. Blood has been bad lately fighting the white man's war. But you'd be surprised how bad the black man is when the black man is fighting his own war. You hear me? But these two groups formed together. And these two groups fought. And they saw that when finally the Seminoles had to go back to Oklahoma, that blacks would not be returned to slavery. You hear me? Native Americans fought on that principle. and Africans did. And what is generally not known is that a unit of Africans refused to go to Oklahoma because they knew white people would be in control of Oklahoma. And they sent an army of Africans to Mexico. And they petitioned the Mexican government. And the Mexican government gave black people a strip of land on the border of Texas and Mexico. And you haven't heard this in the history books. See, we got to start telling our children the truth about our history. Because the Texas legislature heard about an armed group of Africans on their border that had stood Andrew Jackson to the standstill in the Florida Everglades. And they said, no way in the world that some of those in people are going to be able to have guns around us. And the crackers sent, you know who the cracker is.
Oh, yeah. Yes, sir.
The crackers sent 2 armies, and the black army wiped both of them out. But you see, those Africans knew who they were. Those Africans were following the roadway. Those Africans were maroons. Those were Africans who were runaways, who ran away into the mountains to form new African communities. Greater Imani is proving that we can take Africa wherever we are. And if we're in the black community, turn that black community into an African community.
That's right.
But too many of us have departed from the African way. And we can see it today if you ask too many of our young people, brilliant young people, not all, but too many. And I'm not here to indict the youth. If the youth have problems, it's a reflection of too many elders.
That's right. That's right.
Too many of our youth say this, and check this out. We're the most optimistic people on the planet. You know, I don't care how bad things are, we can see a silver lining in a dark cloud. Isn't that right? We got all kinds of sayings. Every dog will have its due. What goes around comes around. But you know, we've reached a point now. There's an African proverb that says that children are the reward of life. Children have so much life in front of them, and African children, that they're usually the most optimistic people on the planet. And yet something has happened to our people, that the most promising group among our people, not all but too many, will say this: I am not afraid to die. All right. I'm afraid to live. You hear me? What can happen to a youth whose parents and great-great-great-grandparents gave birth to humanity itself, who God honored with the great privilege of being the first human beings on the planet, who cherished life more than anybody, who loved more than anybody. Isn't that right?
That's right.
Too often we love everybody but ourselves. Isn't that right? But how is it that a children who come from a people this civilized, this humane, could reach such a point where they have lost hope in living, fear living, because life is more certain than death. You understand? Dr. Wade Nobles and Lawford Goddard, 2 friends of mine, they're both on our faculty, both experts on the black family. They did a study in 1974 on black families. They looked at young teenage families, parents, and older parents. And they wanted to see what's the difference in parenting between the younger ones and the older ones. Thankfully, the majority of the questions were the same, but there were 3 questions on which there was difference. And this speaks to why we have to get back to our own roadway. All right. The first question was, do you teach your children to be proud that they're black? And they said they are proud to be black, but they don't teach it to their children. You hear what I'm saying? If you are taught in a public school by teachers who don't look like you, by teachers who hate you, by teachers who don't teach you your history, it has not been surprising that you won't teach it to your own children. Because what you haven't been taught, you can't teach. And if you come from a household in which black parents say this: you don't need to learn that black mess.
All right.
Is that right?
Yeah. All right.
I got plenty of my students coming to my class tell me their parents said that. I said, go back and tell your parents that when they tell you that, they're telling you they're a mess.
Hey.
Right? Since they gave birth to you, there's no way in the world that they can insult themselves by saying that they're only a mess.
Amen.
So that was the first question. The second question was, in life, what do you place first? The survival of the group or the survival of the individual? The older parents, 75% said survival of the group. The majority of young people said survival of the individual. I'm not here to indict the youth. We're living in urban areas where a rural culture, where we used to say, we look out for each other. Now it's I look out for myself. Whereas we knew our next door neighbor, now we don't care to know. Whereas we used to share, now we got people who are homeless, who are black people, which the government made homeless. But you all understand, we have been homeless since we came to America. But the great tradition of sharing, called communalism, enabled us to survive before, when we have less than we have now.
All right.
So this shows we're departed from our way.
All right.
Then there was a final question. Some people would think this one's very heavy. The question was asked in a tricky way. So the people being interviewed didn't know what it meant. They just had to give the right or wrong answer. The question in effect was, did you believe that things that are one way could become another way? They didn't understand that was revealing a worldview. Well, you know, black folks, we believe that change is constant in the universe. My favorite non-spiritual song is a song that says, everything must change. Nothing remains the same. The young become the old. Mysteries, they do unfold. You understand? We know that in the midnight of slavery, as bad as things could possibly be, we knew that a people who were down would eventually come up. Because we believe that there's a justice in the universe. We believe that those who do wrong ultimately pay for it. I have a saying. I know the Akan say, fear none but God. My saying is, I've learned this in life. Fear only the consequences of what you do wrong. You hear me? Because if you do right, God, who's just, won't do you wrong.
That's right.
But if you do wrong, you need to fear everybody. But when these young people were asked this question, the old folks, 75 to 80% said they believed in change. But the young people said they didn't believe in change. Things that were one way would not change. And we need to understand something. When you reach a point and you're black and you don't understand that you've been in worse situations than you are now, worse situations that our youth have been in right now, except that we had a greater hold on our culture. We always knew that things had to change. And we knew we had to do something to make the change. I'm reading a man named Martin R. Delaney, a great historian, a great leader of the 19th century. And he said he was tired of Negroes who got on their knees to grow, who were constantly on their knees praying to God, but not doing anything. He said, if you got on your knees and prayed to God and didn't do anything, the other man who not only prayed to God or didn't pray to God, if he prayed to God and passed the ammunition and blew you away. Every time he would whip you, because he said, if a man is facing a political, an economic situation, then spirituality is important. But behind his spirituality must be some economics and some politics. You hear me? And so some of our youth have reached a point where when things get real bad, they think about killing themselves. Am I telling the truth? This isn't true of all of them. I'm not here to talk about the majority. I'm here to talk about a growing minority. And that's because too many of us departed from the African roadway. When integration came in the South, And you know, we didn't fight the civil rights movement for integration. We fought for desegregation. We fought for equal access. We didn't fight for black folks to be white. Is that right? I was in the Congress of Racial Equality from 1960 to 1966, as my brother was in the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. I know that black folks fought to end degradation, like segregation. We should be proud that we busted segregation, the formal Jim Crow system, even before it was busted in a nation where blacks were a majority, South Africa. And that South Africa was able to move to the point that they're at, whatever criticism we may have of it, because black longshoremen in Oakland, California started a free South Africa movement in the middle 80s, refusing to unload white goods coming from South Africa.
All right.
We need to give ourselves that credit.
All right.
But as soon as the white businesses were open, as soon as the hotels and the restaurants were open, too many black folks abandoned their own institutions. Is that right?
That's right.
In favor of something white. So that they get a hot dog made by a white man.
Yeah.
When they didn't even want a hot dog. They wanted barbecue chicken instead. So I'm here to talk about returning to the African twin-lineal way.
All right.
As Reverend Atkins said, there's an African-centered cultural renaissance going on right now. There's a brilliant brother who died a year ago. His name was Cheikh Anta Diop.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Heaviest intellectual giant in the world
Yes,
on
sir.
ancient Egypt, on ancient Africa, a physicist, a linguist, a historian, and many other things. And he's at the head of this renaissance.
That's right.
Well, we've got these scholars all over the African world, and these scholars are digging into our past.
All
Because
right.
you know, if you don't know where you come from,
Hey.
you sure don't know where you're going.
All right. All right.
And so we're digging up the truth. And as we dig up the truth, we're being attacked by the white media.
All right.
You'll see Time magazine talking about, was Cleopatra black? That's not the issue. Was Nefertiti black? Were all the pharaohs black? You understand? Because they know if the African in America gets it in his head that he ruled once, he's going to rule again. Giants like Dr. Asa Hilliard, I wouldn't be tenured but for him. Because they, you know, I was a part of the victim of COINTELPRO. They denied me a teaching credential. And then my people put me at San Francisco State. And then they put me on tenure track. And then they tried to knock me off. And Dr. Asa Hilliard was on my tenure committee. And I fought him right and left. And then Hilliard said one day, young man, stop fighting. You've already won.
All right.
Sometimes you can fight too hard and lose. You know? But the thing is, this Afrocentric cultural renaissance is right on time. Our people being an improvising people. And we're able to come up with the right medicine at the right time. Don't let nobody tell you that we're second rate. There's only two cultures indigenous to America. One is Native American, the other is African. And that's because we're a powerful people. And so this African-centered cultural renaissance, they be saying that we're about to put down European history. In case there's any reporters in the house, I want it to be gotten straight. Oh, by the way, there's a black reporter, his name is John Simeon, from the Memphis Commercial Appeal, and he did a fine job of covering this particular event, and we need more black folks who are in those positions to tell the truth. Isn't that right? And so this Afrocentric cultural renaissance is bringing home the truth. Dr. Asa Hilliard is one. Naim Akbar is another. There's a host of giants. There's a sister who has written a book called Yoruba. How many people have heard of it? Everybody should read it. It's the best analysis of European thought done in the world, in my opinion. You hear me? Marimba Ani. And so there's a host of our scholars coming because, you know, too many of our people have worked, scrubbed floors, put our children through college, and too many of our people have moved to the Sugar Hills and deserted our people. And so it's important that our scholars come home. And so there's an awakening. This renaissance is about questioning not only what is wrong with the European worldview, but is right about ours. and discarding what is negative in ours as well. And so we come to recognize that there's a reason why some of our youth have lost a reason for living. There's a reason why some young brothers will kill another brother over a tennis shoe, or over a coat, or over some jewelry, because another mindset is taking hold of us. We've got to free our minds. Wade Nobles, a friend of mine, says too many of us suffer from conceptual incarceration. That means you're imprisoned in somebody else's ideas. Too many of us have been intellectually lynched. Our minds are hanging on trees and we're walking around acting like we're alive and we're living dead people. Because you know if you can't think for yourself, then there's no way you can be alive. A person that doesn't know himself is walking among the living dead. And I say we've got remote control, automatic pilot, 00 soul Negroes. On a white program, and they don't even know it. And if you tell them they're brainwashed, they'll get angry. In fact, the clearest sign that you're brainwashed is when you say you never have been. Because we all have been. And if you're not about freeing yourself from that, coming out of the Rip Van Winkle sleep and waking up, you're not about loving black, thinking black, living black, and sleeping black. So the Afrocentric cultural renaissance, they're trying to say, is about putting down their scholarship. They're saying, we want to get rid of Plato. Well, we have a critique of Plato. But at the same time, we're saying that if you can acknowledge that you have great scholars, whether we agree they're great or not, you're going to have to acknowledge that we do. Because we gave birth to humanity, we also gave birth to civilization, and we're going to see that our scholarship is taught to our children just as you have had the lies of his story shoved down our throats. So what we are seeing is an awakening. We're not here to say that Plato should be taken out of the history books. But my good friend, Marimba Ani, we both wrote 2 books. We didn't know each other. She's an ex-SNCC member. I'm an ex-Core member. She's writing a book on the unjust society, Yurugu. This comes from the Dogon. This means man minus the feminine principle. That means man with no feeling. Does that sound like anybody you know? Man with no emotion. You understand? She's referring to Plato. And it's interesting that I did a similar study. And then I got her book, and her stuff on Plato was so heavy, I added it. But we had reached the same conclusion. Doesn't this show you something's happening? When Africans don't even know each other, and they're thinking the same way, this shows something's getting ready to happen. You hear me? And what she meant by man minus the feminine principle, she said that Greek man defines himself by his absence of feeling, his absence of femininity. Y'all know what I'm talking about, the John Wayne image. All tough and all rough. When I was a boy, you know, we used to watch Roy Rogers. Now, when the movie was over, and a few others, the hero would lead on his horse, but he'd never have a lady. You understand? And I never understood that kind of heroism. You know, when the blood is up and the blood is bad, the ladies be all around it. But the thing is, see, Plato came out of a worldview where feeling was suspect. And it was suspect because you can't control feeling. So you got to understand something about this white boy. This white boy. Because if you have allowed someone else to build your country, if you had allowed someone else to lay the foundation of your culture and set a standard for humanity, you don't deserve to call yourself a man until you get rid of your oppressive ways, your worldview. And so part of their worldview has been this lack of feeling. They fear feeling because they can't control it. There's a great brother named Paul Robeson. Multi-dimensional giant. If ever there was a Superman, it was Paul Robeson. This brother was an all-American athlete. Phi Beta Kappa scholar.
All right.
Got himself a law degree.
Hey.
And when he got into the law office, the white stenographer would not take his messages. And so he went into the theater, because that's what white folks like to see us do, is sing. But he became a multilingualist. He could speak many languages. And he said this about the Europeans. He said, the European ceased to be creative. He said he thought maybe it was sometime during the Renaissance, but he thought it maybe was early. He said when they separated feeling from thought and intellect. He said what happened is they were no longer able to create. Let me break that down.
All right.
Y'all know in America, you have black classical music. Europeans call it jazz.
All right.
By the way, I was talking to a brother at Listerfeld Middleton. This brother does videos on African-centered thought. He interviewed Diop. He's interviewed Asa Hilliard. Yeah. And he said in Nigeria, when they have funerals, the first part of the funeral is sad, just like in Louisiana.
All right.
Right? And then the second part is joyful. And you know what they call the second part? They call it jazzo. Isn't that something? Jazzo. We used to think the name jazz was a bad word. We thought that it came out of dens of iniquity, you know, bad places. That's what we thought. But it come from Africa.
Hey.
But you'll notice this black classical musician, or this blues musician, or this rhythm and blues or gospel musician. By the way, y'all know if you sing gospel, you're singing sacred blues. Is that right? Is that right? Because Brother Thomas Dorsey came and he put the blues in the gospel. And what he did is he took it out of that la-di-da European style that put you to sleep. Is that right? Where all those notes were straight and predictable. It got you into the rough notes, the hard notes, the Ray Charles notes, the Aretha Franklin notes. You hear me? And so, if you get into these black classical groups, you'll see that because they're able to take feeling and they're able to take the mental part, the logic, and put them together, they're able to do what Miles Davis said, rise above yourself. Davis said you can always make good music when you played the best music you could and then played at a point you never played before. That's a new music.
Hey.
But if you check out the European, notice him when he plays. He's usually playing our music.
Hey.
He always has a music sheet in front of him. Is that right?
All right.
And he can't play that music without that sheet. And usually if he plays like us, he spent years trying to copy us. Elvis Presley didn't have enough years. They got a few now, like Tom Jones. He was able to copy rhythm and blues. But they're only able to capture what they're able to copy. They're not able to really interpret it, because to interpret our music, you have to have the feeling. Is that right? And to have the feeling, you got to be black. Is that right? You have to live through it. Is that right? So they can get what Zora Neale Hurston called sound effects.
Hey.
You know what I mean? On the outside, but it doesn't move you. You know, you can always feel the sincerity with black folks, because it comes from the feeling level. You understand? But the European can't do that, because the Plato Project separated the mind from feeling.
All right.
You hear me? The intellect from intuition. And as a result, they have trouble creating good music. In fact, that music hurts your ears. In fact, in the Egyptian mystery systems, they said the highest level of the mystery systems was music.
Right.
You all know music is healing. My wife say that before we had psychiatrists or psychologists, we had singers. And the singers were our doctors. They were our healers. And so you got to understand, we're coming to criticize a worldview that has no feeling. A worldview that reduces everything to a theory. Do you know that one reason why they were able to carry out war against us is that through white supremacy, they created a theory devoid of feeling. And it said we were savages, and therefore we were subject to civilization. There's a European historian who said this about their civilization. He said, America is the only society that went from barbarism to savagery without ever experiencing one day of civilization. You hear me? If you murder between 100 million and 200 million Africans, according to Du Bois, 100 million. According to others, 200 million.
Yes, sir.
Just between the passage from Africa to America. And I don't care how many towering, giant buildings you build. I don't care how many ornate cathedrals you build. I don't care how many long brohams you have and how much money you have in the bank. If you treat a human being less than you treat an animal, then truly you're acting like a savage. Below the level of. So we come to question a worldview with no feeling. Now let me tell you something. Do you know that if you get too much Western education and you don't get rooted to your source, your history and your culture, that you can lose your soul?
All right.
Do you know that? It's good to have education, but we often confuse miseducation with education.
That's right.
An old friend of mine once said, he said, if you ask an educated person, this is true of most educated people, and the more highly educated, it's even more true. And it doesn't matter whether you're black, white, brown, red, or yellow, unless you freed your mind.
All right.
He said, if you ask the educated person a question, he will always quote somebody. But if you ask this everyday person, and this is especially the everyday black person, they will give you their own opinion. They will quote you a proverb. They will tell you they don't have much education. And then they'll tell you like an old man told me, remember this, son, you don't make money work. You go to college to get a job. And the white boy brought us here to work. And here we are going to college to work for the white man that brought us here. And you think you haven't been miseducated. So we are coming to question the European worldview. Because it has not only messed us up, it has not only dehumanized him. You notice this weather pattern. This is summer weather. Flooding, the kinds of which you've never seen before. The European has set himself up as God, and in so doing has waged war against nature as he has waged war against his own women. Now you have a hole in the ozone, and unless a new order with a new mentality comes into being on this planet, this whole planet will become uninhabited. We come to return to the African roadway. Good for everybody. Understand this. There are many debates about where white supremacy comes from. I've often said I really don't care. As long as I know who's practicing it, then all I have to do is know how to deal with that. You understand? Yeah. But Marimba Ani and I put forward this proposition that it seems that from the earliest period of European history, European man in particular has trouble dealing with difference, starting with the feeling difference, the feminine. You know, they try and reduce the female to feeling. But you know, in African thought, the feeling is the higher mind. That's a set. And a set is the one they say who comes to you in dreams. That was Isis. That's the first divine trinity, from which the Christian trinity derives. Is that right? In my book, The Art of Leadership, Volume 2, I have a chapter on the African origin of Christianity and Islam and Judaism. You understand? I mean, I can't understand how Negroes can have churches where the Bible says that Jesus had skin of copper, hair of lamb's wool, and got him looking like a white hippie. I mean, do you love white so much that you gotta hang him up on the wall? Franz Fanon said, when you do that, it's not Jesus that you're worshiping, it's the white man that you're worshiping. And it's not surprising in the Greater Imani Church that you have maybe slightly more brothers and sisters in the church, because when you begin to portray your theology in a manly and womanly light, not in an effeminate light, not always talking, a man talking, can you imagine what would happen if somebody called me Sweet T'Shaka? Oh, if it's a lady, it's all right. But if it's anybody else, we gonna rumble. Can you imagine what happens to a black male who's looking at a white male calling him Sweet Jesus? You understand? Maybe sweet to the men, but my father wasn't sweet to me. He was loving and he was strong. And you know that black male needs that black woman, the Madonna figure. Like that black woman needs that black man, right? The Jesus figure. Understand? And each one can relate to the other one. So what you see then is in this African worldview was this emphasis on the interdependence of male and female. No masculine without feminine, no male without female. And this female is your higher mind. This male is your creativity. You understand?
All right.
And there's the female in the male and the male in the female. But let's get this straight, because I don't want anybody to think I'm talking about feminizing brothers. All right. Masculinizing sisters.
All right.
Sisters have proven to us they can be strong and the finest ladies on the planet. I dedicate the first chapter of my book to my grandmother. And in fact, I have her in the crown of an Ethiopian Kentucky queen mother.
All right.
And my mother said when my grandmother walked, the earth shook.
Amen.
My great-grandmother said of her, she was a black woman that came from Mississippi, my grandmother. Cold black, and knew she was beautiful. She said, this black woman walked like she owned the world. You know, the old folks had this saying, I hope I don't offend anybody. She said, and she didn't have a pop to do what you know. Had a window to go. But she had this deep pride, and it sustained us. Grandma's hands, they used to talk about. The loving hands. Well, you know, in African tradition, it's understood that the man who is hardness, the Asar principle, Osiris, sister likes a hard man, meaning hard. He's got something up here, isn't that right? If there's trouble, you like to feel like that man will be an obstacle to your enemy. He will stop him from running over you. Isn't that right? But in the African tradition, the man is affirmed by understanding that his hardness is always demonstrated through his softness towards his women, through his softness towards his children, through his softness towards his elders. There was a beautiful portrayal of what the black man should be on television a few years ago. It's a brother named Avery Brooks. And he put on the best portrayal of black manhood I've seen on television, other than Malcolm X. And that was a brother named Hawk. You need to understand, the black man be like that. In fact, whenever that program came on, nobody could talk in my house. The phone was taken off the receiver. My wife couldn't open her mouth and didn't want to anyway. And you know, I enjoyed that, and most black people enjoyed that because almost all of us know black men like that. Isn't that right? That's right. The first black man I know like that was my father. Came out of Orange, Texas. When he was 11 years old, he was whipping crackers who were 19 years old. 11 years old. And when they came to lynch him, the Ku Klux Klan, my father was no bigger than this. Light complexion. Looked like he was white, except he had black features. And he would fight the blacks because they said he was too light, and fight the whites because they said he was too dark. And when they came to the house, the only reason they didn't lynch him was he was so small. They were ashamed that a little 11-year-old would whip crack. And then this black man, before he died, he told me this. You know, my father was a man, and so we got a lot of men like this. You know what I mean? My father was so secure in his manhood, he didn't have to brag about this. They drafted him in World War II. And he never told my mother this. She loved this black man. She said, I always felt secure around him. You understand? And he went before the draft board. He did what Malcolm did. He said, draft me. And I just want to tell you what I'm going to do. I'm not killing any Germans. Not that I like them. But the Germans over there never lynched or segregated my people over here. And he said, I'm not killing any Japanese. They look too much like me. Give me a gun and I'm going to kill the redneck crackers who have been oppressing my people. When I told my mother this after my father died, she got angry. She said, why didn't he tell me this? But you know what? My father, as tough as he was, my mother said this about him. She said, you know, he was one gentle, loving black man. And I say this to the brothers. The ideal black man is a ladies' man, and he's a man's man. You understand? We're not about feminizing no brothers. We already know what the ideal woman is. The black woman does not have to be taken to finishing school to be taught how to walk. Isn't that right? She doesn't have to take special dance lessons to learn how to shake her hips. She doesn't have to go to school to learn how to raise civilized children because she's done a better job than any other parents on the planet Earth. And so this European has had this fear of the feminine and then of strangers. They say in Greece the stranger was made a slave. And then of people who were different. And so if you understand that he couldn't understand and accept what was different in him, his feelings, he couldn't understand that. You can understand why he can't deal with you and me. You understand? Whereas the African loves difference. The African likes to learn from difference. The African has no idea that there's only one way. There's many ways to skin a cat. There was King's way and there was Malcolm's way. You understand? And I don't know if you know it now. In this Afrocentric cultural renaissance, there is unification taking place in the African American community. You all heard that a year or so ago, this brother Ben Chambers, they made the mistake of making him executive director of the NAACP. One of the first things he did is start to reach out to the nationalists, to the Afrocentrists, the Pan-Africans. He started to reach out to Angela Davis, who had been his friend, who the system labels a communist. He started to reach out to Minister Louis Farrakhan, the Congressional Black Caucus. And you had the most significant unity meeting to take place among Africans in the 20th century a year ago. And in all places, Baltimore, Maryland, at the NAACP headquarters. You hear me? And no sooner than this happened, the media began to attack this unification. They began to come down on it on all 4 feet. Kwame Ture, who didn't attend the meeting in Detroit, one of the first articles that came out was to say he had been invited. He should have been invited. You understand? If Jews are going to meet, don't Jews have a right to determine who they invite? Since when did white people have the right to determine whether or not black folks are able to unite? So this Renaissance is giving rise to unity. And this unity is none too late. And though they got rid of Brother Dr. Reverend Benjamin Chambers, that unity is still going on. They had a meeting in Chicago, the early part of December. You know, one of the things that came out of that meeting was that there's going to be a 1 million-man black march on Washington.
That's right.
Can you dig it?
Right.
Well, you see, I think that any move that black men make to get together, any move that black men make to clean their community up,
Yes, sir.
any move that black men make to get rid of the drug presence in the black community, any move that black men make to give an example of manhood to younger black males, every sister in the United States and around the world should support us. Is that right? The cultural renaissance is bringing out an old new worldview. It's pointing us to our roadway home. You know, every people in the world that are making progress, there's a key reason why. They're following what's best in their culture.
That's right.
You know, there's an estimate that there's 1,200,000,000 Chinese. Some say it's 850 million. Whatever the number is, they are united on one strip of land. And you know why? Because unlike us, the European was not able to disrupt their culture. And as a result, they govern themselves under what's called Confucianism. Many people think Mao Zedong was a Marxist. If you talk to people who knew Mao, they'll say in theory he was a Marxist. In practice, he was a Confucianist. You hear me? And that's a system where the eldest male is in charge. That's not our way. Justice has got to be in charge. But it works best for them. And if you look at the Japanese, you will see that the Japanese, when Admiral Perry bombed their shores, one of the ships was shipwrecked. The Japanese went inside the ship, got the muskets, took it apart, and figured out how to make guns and gunpowder. And consequently, the European was not able to conquer Japan, and today, because they're following their tradition of Shintoism, which is their African ancestor worship, consequently, they are now the foremost scientific and technological power in the world, because the Japanese knows if you're going to make progress, first you got to be Japanese. So we're here to say this. Africa's in trouble. African in America is in trouble. The African in Haiti is in trouble. The African in South America is in trouble because we have taken on every way but our own way. There was a great Haitian revolutionary. He was the greatest of all. His name was Desolate. You hear me? One of my friends, Dr. Jacob Carruthers, has written a book on the Haitian Revolution called Race Vindication. And the secret of his power was that when the Haitians gained their freedom, he was in charge of the army. He could have done like many brainwashed people have done before or since, or Europeans as well. He could have taken the wealth for himself, but when he came into power, he had three policies. One policy was that if you had a drop of black blood in your veins, you didn't run around here calling yourself Creole, you were black. You hear me? You all have read Newsweek lately? And if you've been reading the newspaper lately, they've been starting to raise the question of what's the difference between race. Here's a cracker who has maintained a white supremacy system based on race. Here's a cracker who invented race and racism. Now coming along to say, what's the difference in a race? The only time the cracker's about ready to let some light-skinned Negroes be labeled other while their head is whipped as if they were black. Because I don't care what label you put down. If you got some black blood in you, they're not going to come up and ask you if you're labeled other or if you're labeled black. But they got this category other because now they know in the 21st century, by 2020, black, brown, red, and yellow people will be a majority in this country, and they want to divide it. So we realized that we got to return to our way. Desolane said if you had a drop of blood in you that was black, you're black. The second thing he said was all land in Haiti had to be owned by black people. We could learn that in some parts of Africa today. You hear me? Where the oppressor has not only not been convicted for his crimes, but has been allowed to keep most of his wealth. In fact, virtually all of them. You hear me? The gold mines, the diamond mines. Do you know what white people would do if they had succeeded in liberating themselves from us? It's no speculation. Look at what happened in Spain. When the European got his hands back on his country, he ran the Moors out and ran the Jews out. We be the only people who are humane enough that we say we want to make them equal participants in our society when the white man doesn't even believe in equality. So we got to understand that Desolane was following the African roadway, but here was the key thing. And see, we got to talk about our roadway home. What is our roadway? We've been so far away from it, we wouldn't recognize it, some of us, if we ran square into it. In fact, if you run into some brothers on the street and you be following this African roadway, they might think you're a chump. Because they've been raised to think that only the strong survive. That's the European way. The last policy of Desolane really points you to the African roadway. Here was a man with all the power. And what did he say? When the land of Haiti is divided up, it will not be divided some for the rich and some for the poor. Some for the light skin and none for the dark skin. And y'all know that's a big problem in Haiti. But y'all know we still got some black folks who have a problem with the skin color. Y'all know. There's a brother named Maulana Karinga, one of our leading scholars. He said if there's one kind of integration black folks need, it's between light-skinned black folks and dark-skinned black folks. Isn't that right? But the thing is, we don't need it because the dark-skinned one wants to get with the light-skinned one to be next to white. And the light-skinned one gets with the dark-skinned one to prove that he's black. We just need to understand we've got a spectrum of skin colors. We need to respect and love all of them. But understand that just as white is the standard for white people and yellow for yellow people and red for red people, our standard is not black, it's blue-black, and we should love it. proclaim this, and this is a secret to our way, because what I want to talk to you about is this twin-lineal way, the African way, the way that has been the secret to why black people have been able to destroy slavery, been able to destroy segregation. And as we, the black man and black woman, gets together, because I'm here to tell you, when the black man and black woman is united, there's no power that can stop it. Jeff Lane's final policy was, and he was in the position where he could have everything, he said, the land shall be shared equity. The land shall be shared equity. When you read the Bible, there's reference to the land of Cush that the ancients called Ethiopia, Kemet, Nubia, Tasset, the Bow people. And the Greeks said of this land that they were the most just of men and women, and they were the favorites of gods, meaning that among the Ethiopians, there was no mistreatment of women or children or elders. What is it that tells us about the African way? Why was it when an African elder was asked, what would be a good village? He said, a good village is a village where not one person disrespects his elder and not one person is guilty of wrongdoing. What is it that leads the African when he's awake to love truth and justice more than anything else? It's the African way. Martin Luther King said this. He said, if a man or a woman hasn't found a purpose in life greater than themselves worth dying for, they haven't found a purpose worth living for.
All right.
Hear me? What is it that tells us about the African way? In this book, Return to the African Mother Principle, I look at 14 ancient African families, families that come before the European. And what I found was that the African family was distinctly different from the European or the Asian family. And if you really look at the African-American family, you'd already know that. You understand? And what I found when I looked at these 14 families, I picked them arbitrarily. That means I didn't have a reason for picking any of them, except that they came from different parts of Africa. And what did I find? Whereas the European has family systems that are matriarchal, ruled by women, or patriarchal, ruled by men, we have some of those. But in almost all the family systems I found, they were not ruled by men or women, they were ruled by men and women. Hello. It always gets quiet at this point because black folks like to digest the new. You know what I mean? We like to put it in. And if it's good, we'll digest it. And if it's not, we'll discard it. Isn't that right?
That's right.
And what I found was that among the Ture people, see, the Ture are the world's first people. They came to birth 3.5 million years ago near the mountain of the moon that they now call Mount Kilimanjaro. European misnomers them pygmies. He makes jokes about pygmy people, small people. But do you know the ancients of Kemet, of Egypt, you know Kemet, the land of the black, not the black soil, the black people, isn't that right? The people of Kemet did not look like Elizabeth Taylor. Y'all know that. Isn't that right? Look like people here. And so the ancients of Kemet held these Ture in the highest of regard. In fact, the oldest ancestor, or Neter, or divine ancestor, was a Ture person. And it is among the Ture that we find the African roadway home. There's a brother named Amar. He wrote a book called 2,000 Seasons. Everybody should read it. And he said this. He was talking about the African roadway. Because you know, we have departed from the African roadway. It used to be there was a roadway of peace and harmony, and now it's a roadway of individualism, a roadway of materialism, a roadway, it used to be we were confident, now it's a roadway of doubt. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Where we'll butt ourselves to death. Anytime a black person's going to do something, we'll say, yeah, we could do that, but, you know, Negroes will never get together. And they be talking about themselves. You understand? And so this Armand, he said this. He said the African roadway, the African way, was never man ruling woman and never woman ruling man. He said the African roadway was reciprocity.
All right.
Now I know something in this church. There's a deliberate policy to push men into the leadership. Isn't that right? And sisters like that because they want to see some conscious men up front. But that does not mean that the sisters don't have no power. Isn't that right? And when Reverend Bill Atkins tells me that his administrative assistant is a sister, see, there's a rule in organization. You always have your back covered.
All right.
I've always found that the best back covers are sisters. Because the sister will smell something coming. She'll look at somebody and say, he's not right. And we brothers operating on the intellectual plane say, I don't know, that's not fair to say that. And then a year later, she'll say, see, I told you. But this is the African way. And guess what? Among the Twa, there are no leaders, there are no followers. There are no rich and there are no poor, because what one Twa has, all Twa has. You all know about that. That's how we survive. We used to have the idea that what I had is yours and what you have is mine. We just got selfish recently. We get into cities and you come over to somebody's house at 6 or 7 o'clock in the PM when you're supposed to get some soul food. And it'd be like padlocks be on the refrigerator. Isn't that right? The people in the house starve themselves until you leave. All he's here to do is eat my food. Well, how's he supposed to survive? And if he eats yours, you eat his. That's called reciprocity. You hear me? And so, among the Twa, listen to this. There were none who were slaves, and others who were free. And this is the reason. Among the Twa. And this is something that's an insight that I hope will be useful to our people. Among the Twa, all males and females are just, and all males and females are equally empowered to run every phase of society. I want you to really think about that. Because what this means is, the Twa were so just that they never conceived of God ever doing wrong. By the way, they still live in the forests of the Congo. And Mobutu wants to wipe them out so that he can have the rich rainforest. The rainforests of 2 areas of the earth are keeping the earth largely alive, but more important, the Twa point us in the direction of justice. See, in our systems, I was talking to your minister earlier today who was in Ghana, and some master weavers made the outfit he has on. And he was talking about how every part of the making of those clothes, which was done in a few minutes, a half hour, was supervised by a master. You understand? The way a novice musician in the jazz tradition becomes a master is he takes on a master and takes on everything about that master. I'm here to tell you something. If we want to find our roadway home, we got to take on the master, not only teachers of justice, but the masters who didn't just talk justice, but who walked justice. And the Twa are those people. They are the most just human beings on the planet Earth. So none of them participated in the slave trade because it never occurred to them to enslave their own people. They were too just. But they were also too wise because they knew not to give anyone more power than anyone else. Isn't that right? Think about this. One of the greatest evils in the world today is the uneven distribution of power. Isn't that right? Newt Gingrich sits up in Congress with his 2-piece suits on, acting like he's a professor, professing nothing but Ku Klux Klanism. Professing nothing but barbarism, talking about he's going to take lunch programs away from children. I had a white guy who was flying down here from Mississippi, and he was saying, it ain't just black kids, it's a whole lot of white kids whose only meal they get is that school lunch program. You understand? And talking about states' rights. We got lynched under states' rights. I'll be for states' rights when we control the state. So what we see under this American system, this cracker has got a contract with America, he says. You understand? It's a contract with the rich. They're going to take from everybody except the defense budget. That's the rich. You understand? And so what we need to understand is wherever people are oppressed in the world today, one fundamental reason is some people got most of the power and others haven't got hardly any at all. You hear me? So the Twa give you this vision that in a society, see, the European, measures civilization by statements like freedom, justice, and equality.
Yeah, right.
Liberty, equality, and fraternity. And you know, black people believe in these words so much that if I didn't say quickly, yes, those are good, but then say it's necessary but not sufficient. What good is it to say that I am free and equal, but I don't have the power to protect that freedom or equality? What good does it do to say I have the right to free speech? Malcolm X, right? Martin Luther King. And as soon as the people start hearing me and rallying around me, the powerful cut me down. I'm here to tell you what the Ture are saying is if you're going to have rights, you got to have corresponding power. And I would suggest at some point in this society, we need to have not only a Bill of Rights, but a Bill of Equal Empowerment. You hear me? A Bill of Equal Empowerment. Oh, it's great. Think about it. The rights need to be expanded. How is it that I have the right to free speech? They say I have the right to be free from invasions in my person's houses, papers and effects, from illegal searches and seizures. And the House of Representatives just passed a bill that says the cracker can come into your house for any reason. So that it's not enough to say I've got the right to be free from illegal searches and seizures. I gotta have the power to be free from it. You hear me? And so we're gonna have to be creative enough to figure out how that happens. And so, I mean, if we look at this country, 80% of the wealth is controlled by 2% of the population. The white redneck male cracker who went out and voted, he made the mistake of not voting, has been fooled into thinking that affirmative action is the problem. Well, he's right, but he doesn't know which affirmative action is the problem. The affirmative action that's the problem is the 3 billion acres of land that Abraham Lincoln gave to the Morgans, the DuPonts, and the Rockefellers, free of charge. Not one penny paid. It's the tax structure that was restructured by Calvin Coolidge, where he reduced the taxes on the rich and increased it on the poor, and it is the tax structure of Ronald Reagan, a man that couldn't shoot bubble gum and walk and think at the same time. More people homeless than you've ever seen before. And so, you know, we need a bill of equal powers like we need an expansion of the Bill of Rights, because I don't think that we just need air rights, mouth rights. What? Yeah. In fact, you know, there's a joke about that. There's 2 parties in America, you know. Most people say it's the Democrats and Republicans. They're really only one. They're not very much different. But the 2 parties are those who vote and those who don't vote. You hear me? And the ones who don't vote because they know they don't get anything from voting. Except every now and then you better vote. Newt Gingrich is one example. So the Ture point us in this example. Isn't it beautiful? They're showing us a society in which your civilization is based on harmony, truth, balance, justice, right order, ma'at. They didn't just talk ma'at, they had balance on every level of their society. But at the same time, it's based on empowerment. The white man's been good at giving you paper rights, no power. You know, Madison said this, y'all should know what this government is. They call this a democracy. Malcolm called it a hypocrisy. Professes freedom, practice slavery. Professes human rights, practices white supremacy. But you need to know this is not a democracy. Technically, they call it a republic. Actually, it's run by a very few. But Madison said this about this democracy. He said, the role of Republican government, I want you to hear this because he's talking about white people. We weren't even included in it. We were treated as chattel, property. He said the role, I'm quoting him now. I read it. I'm quoting. You know, black folks like to have facts. Isn't that right? That's right. And I can quote some white people. Madison said, the role of Republican government is for government to control the people. And then he said, for government to control itself. Can you imagine? The role of government is to control the people. What the Ture show us is this. There is no separation between the government and the people. The government is the people. You understand? Dig on this. And then listen to this. He said this. The reason why the few, the government, must control the many is because if you give power to the people will equitably, equally distribute the wealth. Hello. You all know this is a property thing in the United States of America. You hear me? This is a business society. They call it a civilization. It is based on greed. You understand? So the 12 are pointing us to the roadway home. What I found among the 12 was, when I looked at family systems, the family systems were neither matriarchal or patriarchal, because if you looked at the 12, men and women were both involved in shaping decisions. And then if you looked at the Asante, which you all have visited, and your minister has been installed as an Asante Hina of the Asante nation. What you find among the Asante is in larger societies, where the society is too large for all the males and females to run it, they get a just female. They never elect the queen mother, because you don't elect your own mom. Isn't that right? And furthermore, they know the woman is the one you can trust. She's the one that will nurture you when everybody else is giving up on your poor, sorry self. She's the one that will say, there's something good about that man. In fact, she'll say there's nothing wrong with you at all. Isn't that right? But what you find among them is because they can no longer be ruled by all the males and females, and people are no longer all just. What they do is they create an institution of a just female who nominates this just male. And he, in turn, is held in check by the people's representatives. You understand? So what we have here, what I'm suggesting for you is this. We are going to be a majority in this society in the early part of the 21st century. I was listening to this great black classical singer, Abby Lincoln. Beautiful singer. And I got to hear her with Betty Carter. A bad singer. You hear me? And Abby said this, and this is what we have to do in politics. She said, my father used to build houses. And she says, what I do with my music is I'm building a new world. And we have got to take the best of our past, and we've got to take it and work it and use it so that we can rebuild a vision for our people that will carry us through the 21st century. Because if we do not, when we become a majority in this society, by the way, majority does not mean you rule. That's right. Because the white rich have ruled this country, and they're a minority. And you can bet the divide and conquer games are already being planned right now. Not just the light-skinned blacks against the dark-skinned black, but the Chicano against the black. You understand? And I've been telling my Chicano friends that if you're a Latino, there's two realities you got to come up against. The first is your Indian reality, and the second is your African reality. Because if you happen to be a Mexican, then you happen to be a mixture of Indian and African and a little bit of Spanish. And what's hanging you up is the Spanish part. You understand? So we're going to have to play some smooth politics in the 21st century. But the thing is, the Ture are telling us that we had different kinds of family systems. Among the Asante, when an elder head of the lineage, we call extended family, dies, the eldest female and the eldest male meet. They convene all the elder males and females, and they pick the Opanion, who is like the Asante Hina, the one that never lied, stole, cheated, robbed, and listen to this, never in his whole life shamed himself. And so the African Constitution is telling us, though all of us no longer are just, we had enough sense to entrust rulership, and rulers were always nothing more than people who guided a consensus. They never imposed their will on us, on people who are just. I would suggest to you today, we need that standard for picking leadership in the black community. That's right. You hear me? Yes, instead of somebody running for office, or heading a community organization, or heading a church, he shouldn't even be the one that puts himself forward unless he initiates it, as Reverend Bill Akins has done, and then the people have their say-so. But the people should pick the ones who are honest. Amen. Pick the ones who don't lie. Pick the ones who don't abuse their wives and children. Pick the ones who don't play around with other men's wives. Pick the one that has courage and will stand up for the truth. I'm here to tell you, we come to return to the twin-lineal way. What I'm trying to say to you is this. These African families I looked at were like Amar said. They were neither ruled by male nor female. They were neither matriarchies nor patriarchies. They were neither patrilineal or matrilineal. Matriarchy ruled by women. Patriarchy ruled by men. You all know this about the black family. My household. My mother and father were equally strong. They were co-equals. You hear me? In most black households, you got two forces in you. Isn't that right? Where the man is in the house, one's a man, the other's the woman. You can't count either one out. Isn't that right? There'd be a nation sitting right there around the dinner table. Isn't that right? And so we got to understand this. We have been at our best when black men and black women were working together, because while for the Chinese, Confucianism is their way, the twin-lineal way is our way. What do I mean by twin-lineal? I just mean this. These family systems show, by the way, in some African family systems, instead of when you have patriarchy, your last name comes from your father's family, isn't that right?
Yeah. Right.
But you know you have African families like the Igbo, where a male child's last name comes from his father's family, a female child's last name comes from his mother's family. The Kum people in the Kalahari Desert, where the first male and female child is named after the last name of the father, and the second male and female child is named after the last name of the mother. Do you know what they're saying? The man can't make it without the woman. The masculine can't operate without the feminine. You understand? They're saying you can't be human unless you incorporate both. I call this the twin-lineal way. It's our way. Whenever we've been in harmony with this way, we've been the toughest and the roughest, and nobody's been able to beat us. Because if you think about it, I don't care what you call your family system, and most black people don't know what patriarchy means anyway. And if you told them, they'd probably say, that isn't what I've got. Is that right? But all this means is, I don't care what you call your family system, I'm not descendant of just my father, even though my last name comes from him. That's right. I'm descendant of my mother and my father. Right. I'm not descendant of just my grandfather or my grandmother. I'm descendant of my grandmother and my grandfather. And see, in ancient Kemet, they believed the soul, which is God. They said the soul was mother, father. That means God. They saw God as all and everything. And if God can create, you must have both these powers. We know God's spirit may not have either one. But we have to conceive God. If we do, it's of the all. And so in the family, we see that it's men and women governing the family, cooperating in the family. I have a friend, Mr. Oscar Wright. He's a multi-millionaire. He's a co-chair of the Black United Front in Oakland, lives in the Oakland black community. He said, when we got married, to show you how this principle works, my wife and I sat down at the table, and what we decided was who was strong in what, who was weak in the other. Right. And the one that was strong in the one, they were in charge of that. And the one that was weak in the other, then they let the other one have that. You understand? I'm here to tell you, Amilcar Cabral, one of the greatest leaders, I believe the greatest leader in the 20th century. He led the movement in getting the South to liberation. Cabral said, the greatest enemy of a people is not their external enemy, it's their own internal weakness. You hear me? It's a sad home where the man or the woman is not strong enough to say, I'm not good at this, you do it. You're not good at that, let me do it. And it's a sad family where two people are both putting their resources into the family. Only one's got a say-so in what's happening in the family. I'm here to tell you this twin-lineal way is the way that we freed ourselves from slavery. It was Harriet Tubman, it was Sojourner Truth, it was Denmark Vesey and Nat Turner. The black man and black woman, one leading them away, the other blowing them away. If you look at that Montgomery bus boycott, check that Montgomery bus boycott out. That's what got me involved in the movement. King brought me into the movement. I wasn't wise enough to understand Malcolm. And then I reached the point where I put King down. You understand? Because I had become a child of Malcolm and later come to understood that both of these had more in common than they had that separated. They both ended up being revolutionaries. At the end of his life, while King was still a nonviolent revolutionary, King said the problem in this society is structural. Meaning, Malcolm put it this way, this society is as crooked as a pretzel. They both somebody that hasn't got a conscience. So segregation was not destroyed by Martin Luther King. He said so. Read, Strive Towards Freedom. His autobiography of that movement. He said, I did not initiate the Montgomery Project, but when the people called on me, he said, I served as a spokesperson for the people, a spokesperson for freedom. By the way, that's what real leadership is. Real leadership is a mouthpiece for what's just and right among the people.
That's right.
Remember? You know, now you got some handkerchief-head political leaders. You don't think that they're supposed to be the mouthpiece for the people?
Right.
They're supposed to be able to get into the back room and cut a deal for themselves and for the white power elite. We have got to begin to train our own leaders. By the way, I want to announce this to you, Reverend Atkins, and to the members of this church. In Black Studies, we have now created as a concentration in Black Studies. Instead of humanities, social science, and science, which, by the way, we now have the first Black Studies department that offers physics, chemistry, biology, and mathematics. All right. We have created a concentration called Urban Leadership Academy. It takes the place of those concentrations. And what we're saying is, it takes the same thing to make a leader of a church, of a community organization, of a black business, on the school board, or whatever. It takes the same thing, and we want to cooperate with your minister in this church in helping us to set it up, because one part's going to be in Black Studies, the other part's going to be in the community. Because we've got to start to train our own leaders, our own So I'm wrapping up. This twin-lineal way asserts this: African people will not gain freedom through only the labor of the African man. African people will not gain freedom only through the labor of the African woman. The twin-lineal way is the way that says that it's going to take the full power of the African man and the African woman to free us.
Yes, sir.
I want to assert this. Yeah. Many sisters are lonely right now. Many young sisters, they are worrying that they may never find them a good black man.
All right.
By the way, this is kind of funny, but my friend Nathan Hare, he's got a solution for most of them. Nathan says, just go down on the street corner. And you see all these brothers standing out on the corner. Check out who their mama is. I'm adding this part. Check out who their father is. See if their character is right. Take them home, clean them up, and tell them to go out there and get it done. And you say you don't know about it. But I'm here to tell you, this twin-lineal family is absolutely necessary for an age that is computerized, scientific, and technological. We're entering the 21st century. Garvey said this in 1920. The race that masters science and technology will rule the world. We don't want to rule the world. We just want to rule ourselves. That's right. One of the things that's got to happen is we have got to be in tune with this technological revolution. Here you all have a satellite program that's going all over the world. You understand? The Pan-Africanists need to come here and study this stuff, because we need to begin to take this media that has brainwashed our people and gain control of it.
That's right.
And when Reverend Bill Aikens told me how easy it was, all you had to do was have a couple of $1 million. And that means all you have to do is have your people behind it. What I like about your satellite is you're not using it to raise money.
That's right.
Like these cracker preachers and some of these Negroes.
That's right.
I'll send you a holy prayer call. I got a cloth of my own. I don't need to give you $100. And I got the same communication with God you got.
That's right.
So the thing is, we got to understand this. The people of the 21st century, many of them are going to be living in urban areas. In Africa, much in the rural areas. But here, many of them in urban areas. The people that survive are the people that are going to be creative, innovative, able to make decisions quick. And the people who understand that they have to control their own economy. You understand? What I'm saying about this twin-lineal family system, this is good for Africa, this is good for the Caribbean, this is good for South America. The black man is out of the family, not primarily because he's chasing white women. Only 7% roughly of black men or black women are married to white men or white women. Only 7%. You know, among some Asians, it's 45% of their women married outside their race. Brothers, you should love the sister for sticking with us through thick and thin. So we got to understand that the black male is out of the family because he's on drugs in some cases, in jail. There was a thing called the counterintelligence program that put drugs in the black community, that assassinated King and Malcolm X and many of the Black Panthers. But the main reason the black man is out of the family is revealed by two statistics. In 1960, when 75% of our families had a black man in it, 75% of our men had jobs. Between 1976 and 1983, when 700,000 sisters became heads of single-parent households, 700,000 brothers lost their jobs. You hear me? There should be a message in this.
That's right. That's right.
Our young males are in special education.
Yes.
They only created it since we lost control of the classroom. I don't want segregation, but I sure do love that black schoolhouse with that black teacher. More of our men, especially, and our women need to go back into the classroom if you love your children. Because next to being parents, the most important occupation is to be a teacher. Here, the parent is the first teacher. Well, we know special education classes have this characteristic. Over 75% of the teachers are white females.
That's right.
The overwhelming majority of the students are black males. On the one hand, we need to see that every black child that is put into special education who is not clearly mentally handicapped or physically disabled, and if they are, you need to put them somewhere else. We need to see that they are taken out of those programs because they are being programmed to state and federal prisons. They are being programmed to death. And you know that these kids, these black males, have no less gray matter than the black female.
Amen.
The fact is the black male is viewed by the greatest threat in this society.
That's right.
So we need to understand this. The black family not only has to be retooled to teach our history and culture. Greater Imani Church is passing that on. This Afrocentric Renaissance is passing that on. We need to have study groups in our home. And what I love about your Bible study, this is true of St. Stephen's Baptist Church. You ain't just studying about the Bible.
That's
you
right.
Understand? Because we got to live what we preach. We got to live our relationship. But the key thing is, our families have to do as the African family has always done. The fundamental economic unit of the world is the family. If you look at Korea, they are beginning to rise, partially because they put some technology there because they were yellow. And they're following their tradition. But fundamentally, the business is in the family. In Japan, the person who makes the marketing decisions is the Japanese woman. Because while the man controls the politics, she controls the finance. And we know the old saying, no finance, no romance. Used to be a song in the 60s that said, ain't got a cent to pay the rent, but we gonna make it. And my question always was, how? But I'm here to tell you something. Parents, really listen to this. Young people, really listen to this. And I know in this church you're being taught this already. We got to quit preparing our children just to go to school and get an education, which is right, just to go to work for white folks.
That's right.
We have got to tell our children that we have got to use the talent that we have, if it's mathematical talent, scientific talent, singing talent, musical talent, artistic talent, health talent, whatever your talent is, we have got to say that the family is going to become the primary unit that begins to produce what our people need. Our families have got to become what they used to be, lineage businesses. You hear me? Where the male and the female come together to pool their savings. We need to tear up the credit cards. My wife and I got credit to buy a house. And then, you know, we went on a trip and she found something she really liked. And when she found it, now, I was really doing this out of being right. I said, yeah, baby, you can have it. Because we have a decision in our house. Any decision over $100 is joint. Ain't nobody going to spend it on their own. But when she saw this thing, she really liked it. And I said, yes, it came out of the goodness of my heart. Now, I want you to know that. Then I said, baby, you can have this, but you know, it's only right what I'm saying. You got to tear up those credit cards. And you know, we've been much freer since we tore up those credit cards. You understand? Because as long as you're paying somebody else the interest on top of what you owe, as long as you're always going on what you want rather than what you need, you're always in debt. You're always in pawn. We got over $300 billion and we call ourselves poor. Individually, some of us are, but collectively, we're rich. We got to have confidence in ourselves to begin to pool that wealth, to begin to build an economy, as I hear you saying in this church. We're going to take over this black community. We got a black insurance company inside of here. That's what the black church used to do. The black church was the basis of the black economy. We got to go back to that. So I'm here to tell you, in this scientific, computerized age, black people who know improvisation better than anybody are best suited to cook in this age, provided that the black man cooks with the black woman, and the black woman cooks with the black man. And I'm here to tell you something else. On the African continent, I want Kwame Ture to hear this. One of our greatest scholars, John Henry Clark, he says his mind's better than any 50, and John is not arrogant. He's probably better than any 1,000. I was at his house. He's got 25,000 books. I pulled a book off the shelf, and he's blind. And he said, that book doesn't belong here. He went all the way over the other part of the room and put it where it belongs. John Henry Clark says this. The problem with Africa is that there is not one government on the African continent based on the best of African governance principles. All of them operating out of Westminster democracy or American so-called democracy. All of them almost working under the World Bank and International Monetary Fund, who come in and tell you to devaluate your currency, lower the standard of living of your people. And then they say it's in their interest. No, it's in the West's interest to keep you on your knees. And I'm telling you this Twa vision is good for Africa. Not only at the lineage level. If we're to have people-to-people exchanges, you all have, I would suggest, with the exception of Rawlings and Ghana and a few other progressive heads of state, go directly to the villages. Deal directly with the people. And encourage them to support the culture that is their own, these twin-lineal systems where there's no male without the female. And I would suggest to you, as Diop also suggests, as I suggest in this book, we do not need a parliamentary or democratic system that hasn't worked, trying to work in Africa. Where Africa doesn't even have the history for it to work. You understand? Where Aristotle, who set this system up, said, we give the people the right to vote so they have the illusion of freedom. But actually, they'll always vote for the same people. Crackers who will sell you out.
That's right.
So I'm suggesting to you that just as our family, our way, is not the male ruling the female or the female ruling the male, at the village level, we need to encourage the development of male-female assemblies, but not just males and females, but just males and females. And at the national level, males and female assemblies, because that is the way Africa has governed itself best. And if this country wants to know what's best for Africa, it's an African form of democracy. One where the people rule, not where the European rules. So we come to restore our way, the African way. My brothers and sisters, we come so that the way of a set, the dark moonlight, shall rise again. We come so that the way of a star, that bright sunlight, will shine again. So the black man and the black woman can one day hold their head high and say that the first shall be last, and the last shall be first. Amen. Thank you. Amen.
Kwame Ture, speaking tomorrow night at Lemoyne College in the Little Theater, 8 o'clock. And this is like, it's beautiful, you know. We didn't sing this thing like this, but it's beautiful that we got Oba T here tonight. We got Kwame tomorrow night. And listen, to Kwame's lecture tomorrow night is Forward to African Unity, Pan-Africanism, the only solution. Y'all know y'all in a church, right? And y'all know at Bible study, every Bible study night, we take a collection. So get ready. Come on, trust me. Wait a minute. Also back there, Tyler. Give me your new name, brother. I want to respect your new name. Olabala. Brother Kwame, brother Tyler Muhammad Olabala. We had a beautiful, hold on now, hold on. We're going to take this collection because we do it every Bible study now. And look, what we're going to do is this. We're a little bit behind, and I want Dr. T'Shaka. We're going to escort him up to the bookstore. So I want you to go up to the bookstore and buy his book. You'll be able to talk to him in the bookstore. Let me recognize a few people here. Stand up, Brother Bob Stewart, Reverend Stewart, Pastor African Holy Church. Stand up, the President of our Memphis City School Board, Commissioner to One-Stop Mention. I want you to talk to Dr. T'Shaka. His book is being used by the Detroit school system, and we want it used in the Memphis school system on the art of leadership. And want to get a chance to talk to him tonight before he goes. So, if you would, this is my, you didn't meet, but you talk about the women at the Greater Imani. This is my associate pastor here, Minister Katie Cleveland. Would you lead him, take his books, and get him on to the bookstore? Amen. I tell you what, you know what? I feel like I'm back in the 70s and 60s. You all know that I was a snake, and when I saw Kwame, the first time I met Kwame, as you remember, Stokely, was 1965, Tennessee State University. And it did my heart well to see him walk in that door. Back there, I mean, when I saw him walk in, I was just in shock, because I didn't even know he was coming tomorrow night, but I didn't think he would get here till tomorrow. So that was beautiful to see him here. So we got a little reunion of old Schnick folks, some old poor folks. Tony, good to see you. Miss Wills is here. Let's see. Oh, look. Now, Sunday, while they're doing that, visitors, my visitors. Sunday, all this month at Greater Imani, I've been preaching a special series. Sunday, my sermon will be from Africa to Bethlehem.
Well.
And you need to bring your friends here. If you want to hear the Afrocentric sermon, that's right. I preach most often around the nation and world. It's from Africa to Bethlehem. And we'll be sharing that Sunday. Good to see you. Vernon Atkins, Senator Vernon. Work with you on the about 4 years on LOK. And I saw small folk out there. Hadn't seen them in a while. It's all good. Thank God for that. All right. Let me just share let me just share this, and we're going to close in the party. What Dr. T'Shaka said is where we are now. We must return to the essence of what we are. Amen. For 200 years, we have been a people that have been lost. Lost. Wondering, trying to find out who we were. Now we're learning, and it's time now to return to what you are and be proud of what you are and return to it comfortably. Return to it comfortably. And That's where we are today, and thank God it's finally happened. Amen. Because I listened to Stokely Carmichael in 1965. Said things that Dr. T'Shaka said tonight. Y'all know that? I heard him say in 65 things we are saying now.
Do you hear that?
Yeah, that's right. I'm telling you. So God, I tell you, we have come a long way. Hallelujah. Amen. Stand on your feet and repeat after me.
Make an announcement.
Faster.
Yes.
Let me make an announcement real quick about this tape.
I can't hear you.
Can I make an announcement real quick?
We always do open the doors of church. There's someone here who does not have a church home, looking for a church home, looking to unite. All that you do here at this church is step forward, and we automatically accept you in. Is there anyone here tonight? Just step forward. Sunday casual. Come as you are. Thank you for that. What's this? Oh, the African tapes are ready too for those who went to God. They're ready. So get ready for that. All right. Anything else for that?